Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today we are literally cracking the code to the Nature Masterclass on peer review. You know that feeling, staring at a blank screen, wondering how on earth you're going to get your research past those notoriously tough gatekeepers of academic publishing? Well, you are in exactly the right place. We're going to completely shift your goal today. We're moving away from simply trying to quote-unquote sell your research, and instead we're focusing on building an unbreakable, airtight case that leaves reviewers with absolutely no choice but to respect your work. Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. We're going to journey through the 6 crucial links of a flawlessly structured paper. We'll start with the logic chain, then move right through the setup, methodology, results, the discussion, and finally wrap it up with the ultimate mindset shift you need for publication success. Let's dive in. Section 1. The core logic chain, building the unbreakable case. The fundamental concept here is that a truly high-quality paper isn't just a bunch of isolated sections. It is a continuous, unyielding chain of logical connections. You start with a really clearly defined problem, which naturally highlights a specific gap. That gap then dictates your objective. Your objective shapes your method, which produces your results, and those results strictly govern your conclusion. Now, I gotta warn you right now, a failure in any single link completely breaks your entire case. Seriously, if your methodology is kind of flawed, it shatters the validity of your results and makes reviewers question the whole study. The chain absolutely must remain intact. Moving on to Section 2, the setup, establishing the gap. And honestly, this all begins with the very first thing an editor or reviewer lays eyes on: your title. Let's compare a couple of approaches here. Think about a weak title packed with hyped-up words like revolutionary and amazing. Reviewers immediately bristle at this kind of promotional language because, well, it makes massive claims before presenting a single shred of evidence. Now, contrast that with a title that is clear, informative, and academically neutral, something that tells the reviewer exactly what the methodology and application are, without that exhausting sales pitch. It's just a night and day difference. Once you've hooked them with a solid title, you absolutely must establish the research gap. And here's the kicker. A gap isn't just some lazy citation dump. You have to actively prove it by synthesizing the literature to answer some really specific questions, like what has already been done, what remains unresolved, why are the current solutions insufficient, and most importantly, what does your work do differently? If you can answer these, your gap becomes completely undeniable. Section 3, methodology. Designing for reproducibility. When you're writing this section, you've really got to put on the reviewer's lens. The sole question you should be asking yourself is, can another competent researcher read this and completely reproduce my study? Take data leakage as an example. This is a massive methodological error, especially in things like machine learning, where data from the same subject accidentally ends up in both the training and test sets. It artificially inflates performance. I bring this up just to show you how ridiculously easy it is for a methodology to break down. This is exactly why exact details like your dataset splitting strategy are non-negotiable. If you hide the details, reviewers are definitely going to assume the worst. The exact same rule applies to the mathematics of your writing. When you introduce a formula, say calculating a final prediction score, your equation should clarify your algorithm. It shouldn't be there just to complicate things or make you look smart. You have to meticulously break down every single variable. What is P? What's W? Are those weights normalized? Seriously, a beautifully formatted equation is entirely useless if the reviewer has to play a guessing game with your variables. Absolute transparency is your absolute best friend here. Now, for complex methods, something really interesting to include is an ablation study. Reviewers always want to know if your improvement is actually real or if it's just a lucky byproduct of throwing random components together. An ablation study systematically strips components away to isolate exactly what causes the improvement. It is an incredibly powerful way to literally bulletproof your methodology. Section 4, results, the golden rule. This is usually where the tension builds, because it's the exact moment so many authors fall into the super dangerous trap of overclaiming. Let's just take a second and let this sink in. Evidence must match the claim. This is the absolute golden rule of peer review, and it has to govern every single sentence you write in your results. You literally cannot claim your method is the best in the world if your experiment only tested it on one tiny limited data set. Let's see how this actually plays out. Imagine an unsupported causality claim like, our model improves clinical diagnosis. Well, if your study only evaluated algorithms on a benchmark computer dataset, you absolutely cannot claim you've improved actual clinical diagnosis in real hospitals. Instead, look at how we can rein that into something like, the improved segmentation performance may support future computer-aided diagnostic applications. See the difference? That is an accurate, evidence-based interpretation that a reviewer simply cannot dismantle. Section 5. Discussion and conclusion. The scientific reasoning. Remember, the discussion is definitely not the place to just repeat your results. The reviewer already read those. This is where you have to rigorously explain why those results occurred. And a hugely crucial part of that scientific reasoning is acknowledging your limitations. So many authors are terrified of this. They think listing something like a limited data size is just going to give the reviewer ammunition to reject them. But the reality is the exact opposite. Openly listing your limitations demonstrates profound research maturity. You're showing the editor that you truly understand the boundaries of your own work. Transparency wins every time. And you know what? Those limitations feed perfectly into your conclusion. Think about contrasting a super weak, vague statement like, in the future, more research can be done, with a specific, actionable direction. A strong future work statement naturally emerges directly from those honest limitations. It basically gives the scientific community a clear, step-by-step roadmap for what to do next. Finally, Section 6, the mindset shift, redefining the goal. Let's permanently lock in this logic chain we've been building up. If we actually trace the reviewer's process backwards, it makes total sense. They start with your final claim. Then, they check if it's supported by the evidence. They check if the evidence came from a rigorous experiment. They check if the experiment used the correct methodology. And finally, they check if that methodology actually answers the initial research question. If that foundational research question is weak at the very bottom, your entire claim at the top just collapses like a house of cards. So often, authors stare at the page thinking, how can I convince the reviewer that my method is excellent? But honestly, this is a totally flawed defensive mindset. They try to convince, trick, or basically sell the reviewer, and that mindset, it leads directly to hype, overclaiming, and completely obscured methodologies. So you really need an ultimate mindset shift here. The real question is, how can I provide sufficient, transparent, reproducible evidence so that a knowledgeable researcher can independently evaluate my claim? That's the exact standard that will elevate your future publications. You aren't a salesperson. You are an investigator providing a crystal clear trail of evidence. You want to hand the reviewer the exact steps, allowing them to independently reach the exact same brilliant conclusion that you did. Which brings us to our final thought for today. When you sit down to write your next manuscript, will you simply try to sell a claim, or are you going to build an airtight case? I really challenge you to apply these principles immediately. The difference it makes in peer review is absolutely staggering. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this leaves you hungry to explore these masterclass strategies even further.